Hey everyone, my name's Alexandra and I'm a watercolor artist. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to paint 5 basic watercolor leaves for beginners. I paint a lot of botanicals, a lot of florals, and I use a variety of different leaves in my paintings. Super helpful, especially if you're wanting to get more into botanical painting, just to know some basic leaves to get you started. So I hope you enjoy this video. For today's painting, I'm going to be using Philosophy and Co's Terrain watercolor palette. I'm using a mixture of vine leaf, balsam, Spanish moss, blue shadow, and sourwood, or if you guys have another watercolor paint that's brown, then feel free to use that one. For today's painting, I'm using 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. For this tutorial, I'm using 3 different types of paintbrushes. I have Opus Allegro number 8 and number 3, as well as a Princeton number 6, the Filbert brush. 2 cups of water, and a napkin for drying your paintbrushes. So first thing that we're gonna start with is our basic watercolor leaf. I have a tutorial that goes a little bit more in depth on this, but I'll give you guys just the quick and easy steps of how to paint this leaf. So grab a pencil, we're gonna draw anywhere on your paper. I'm gonna draw a line that has a little bit of a curve to it. My line is dark right now, so I actually want to go back and erase it to make it really light. Once water hits the lead, the pencil lead, it's really hard to erase later, so it's easier if you guys start with it lighter from the beginning. So for this one, I'm going to use my Opus number 4 paintbrush, and I'm going into my paints and getting a green. So this is one of the leaves that I use most commonly in my paintings, just because it's so simple, so easy to do, and it looks really nice as well. So it works. So from where your pencil, the top of where your pencil is, you're gonna start above, put the tip of your paintbrush down, and we're applying pressure as we pull back. So I'm gonna do the same thing going along each side of the pencil line. So tip of my paintbrush down, applying pressure as I pull back, and I'm going in a bit of a C curve shape. So if I leave, I had a little bit too much water there, but if I leave a bit of a white space in the middle, then it kind of acts as the vein of the leaf. So I often like to do that. When I paint, I try to switch up the angles of my leaves just to make it look more realistic, more natural. So we'll do 1 more leaf on either side. And once you've done that, you guys can either take a skinnier paintbrush, or I'm just going to use the very tip of my paintbrush. And I'm doing a really thin line down the middle. And then I'll do my little stems attaching to each leaf. So I'm angling them all. The key with this leaf is to not have everything super stiff and straight. We want to make sure that we kind of give it some angles just to make it look more loose, more natural, give it a bit more flow. All right, so that is it for a very simple, basic watercolor leaf. The second leaf that we're gonna paint, I'm gonna kind of follow the same idea and do a line with my pencil coming up. I like to start with pencil just as a guiding line so that I know where I'm gonna paint. Your other option is to start with your line of watercolor paint. But for this leaf, we're gonna paint more of a eucalyptus looking leaf. So I'm gonna go into my green, and I'm actually gonna add a little bit of blue. Often when you see like seeded eucalyptus, they're more of a green-blue color. And for this leaf, you could use your regular paintbrushes. For this one, I'm gonna use a Filbert paintbrush, which has a bit more of a rounded tip. And we're just trying to get circular shapes. So I'm doing the exact same concept and applying pressure as I pull back, but I'm getting these circle shapes instead. So with this one, instead of exactly following either side of the line, I'm gonna do my leaves a little bit more random, and then we can go in and add our branches after. So just making it a bit more full. So again, I'm just putting my paintbrush down and sort of going into C curves with my brush to get these circular shapes. And this is with more of a blue paint. I needed a little bit more water there. So we'll go and add some. And we'll just fill it in. And then if I want to, I can get some darker paint. So going in with some blue shadow mixed with my balsam color, and I can kind of just dot it in where it's still wet and just let it bleed into the paint a little bit. And now I'm gonna go back and take my small paintbrush, and we're gonna do the stem. This time I'm gonna take my blue paint. I have it pretty dark there. I'm gonna mix it with some green. And then I'm gonna mix it with a little bit of this brownish color that I already have mixed up. You guys can do some red or something along those lines, just to give it more of a branch look. So starting from my leaf that's at the very top, I'm gonna do a line coming down, and it's gonna come in behind these leaves that are sort of sitting in the front. And now we're gonna attach all of our leaves. Again, I'm just starting from the base. None of my lines are too stiff for the stems. They all kind of have a bit of a curve. You'll notice that I'll sometimes change the thickness, and this is all just to make it look more natural. So this one I think I'm actually gonna stem down all the way there. And there you have your eucalyptus style leaf. None of these leaves are necessarily following a certain leaf too specifically. It's just, yeah, easier to think of what you're painting when you're doing that. So that's a really good filler leaf to add into your paintings. So the next one that I do quite commonly is we'll do exactly the same idea, except this one's gonna have long, skinny branches. So I'm gonna do a bit of a waved line this time with my pencil. Again, erasing most of the pencil line. And this time with my really skinny paintbrush, I'm gonna go into one of my colors. For this one, I'll grab my vine leaf. And using the wet on wet technique, exactly the same concept as this one, but I'm using a skinnier paintbrush, and I'm pulling back more, and I'm giving my leaf a bit of a wave. So I'm following either side of this pencil line that I've drawn. I'm applying pressure as I pull back, and then I'm lifting up. And you'll see that I kind of am just going in random directions, but the idea is all the leaves are essentially coming towards the center. Just gonna add a bit more water. These ones, yeah, I don't know exactly what you'd compare it to, but I find that they give more, they can give more of a tropical look. If you add some more texture to the edges, it can look a little bit like a fern. So I'm gonna go in with this color. I'm just mixing it in with a bit of this darker mixture that I already had for the stem. And with the very tip of my paintbrush, we're gonna follow that pencil line down. And then if any of the leaves, I'm just gonna give it a bit of a curve. If any of the leaves aren't quite attached, we'll attach them. All right, so that is your next one. Now we're gonna paint sort of a pine branch looking leaf. Yeah, I guess more of a branch than a leaf, but we'll do this one this way. So light line with my pencil. Oh, I had some water on there. Okay, we'll just let that part dry a bit before coming down there. But for this one, I want a really nice dark green. It's kind of like a pine or fir branch. So we're gonna go into our balsam color there. And then I'm gonna mix it with a little bit of this brown tone just because I want it darker. And if you guys don't have brown, I just had this pre-mixed on my palette, feel free to just add a tiny bit of red to it. And then if you want, you can even add a little bit of blue. All right, so for this one, we're doing smallest paintbrush. I'm using my number 3, and I'm doing a bunch of super, super thin lines, all coming towards the center. So one thing that you'll notice with my lines is that they're not all completely uniform and straight. I have them a little bit random so that they're overlapping a bit with each other. And again, this is just mimics what you see in nature more often. So I have the one there. Another way that you can do this if you don't want to just start with the pencil, we're gonna add another branch to this one, is you can actually start with your really thin line coming down. And we're gonna do exactly the same thing over here, and I'm doing really, really skinny lines, all angling down towards that center stem. And I have them, some are skinnier, some are thicker. If they're different textures, it's okay. With this one too, if you're using it to fill things, you can make it skinnier, you can make it wider. Honestly, you guys can just play around with this. This is a branch that I most commonly use when I'm doing paintings in the winter time. Yeah, just because I find that, I don't know, it's the trees that you see that remind me of Christmas trees. So I use that often in the winter, but I do use it in a lot of my other paintings. All right, so the last leaf that we're gonna do is we're gonna start with similar concept to this one, but it's gonna have a bit more textured, jagged edges. So we'll do it up here, and I'm gonna do it curving out a little bit. I'm gonna erase the pencil line and make it nice and light. And this one, just so that I do one the other way around and you guys can see it a bit better, I am going to paint my stem line first. So I'm just following this pencil line really thin. You'll see that the thickness changes a little bit throughout, and that is okay. And now we're gonna go in with our medium paintbrush. So here I'm using number 4. And I'm gonna go in with my paint. This time I'm gonna go back to the vine leaf color, and I might mix in a little bit of Spanish moss. And we're gonna start with the same concept. So tip of your paintbrush down and you're pulling back. But now I want you guys to go over. You're gonna start tip of your paintbrush down and pull back. And essentially what we're doing is adding jagged edges. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. So I'm starting with the tip of my paintbrush and just working my way down. So we'll do a few more of those. Tip of my paintbrush, and I'm working my way down. And then with these ones, you can also leave more white space inside. This one, it didn't quite go to the edge, so I'm just gonna fill it in. So I often use these leaves when I'm painting things like roses or flowers, where I just notice that the leaves have more texture. So with this leaf, you guys can see that I can be a little bit more random and less specific with my lines, and I end up with the effect that I want with that white space left in the middle there. So tip of my paintbrush down, I'm just gonna get a bit more water there. And I sort of just work my way down section by section. Start from the top there, I'm applying pressure, working my way down, but leaving the white gaps. And again, changing the direction of my leaves as I go. Now I'm just gonna go back to my tiny paintbrush. I get a little bit of a darker color for the stem. And I'm just gonna add a really thin lines coming up to the leaves. All right, and there you guys have 5 super basic watercolor leaves. Practice these, it'll help you when you're painting with your botanicals, just to have filler leaves, and you can eventually add more and more detail to them. Thanks for watching. I hope that you guys had fun learning to paint some basic watercolor leaves in this tutorial. If you guys did follow along, make sure to take a picture, send it to me on Instagram at Alexandra Victoria Studio. I absolutely love to see when you guys are practicing and painting, so please do share. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to like this video, comment below something you'd like to learn next, and subscribe. See you next time.